Love to introduce you to Oyidiya Oji. Oyidiya is the Policy and Advocacy Advisor for Digital Rights at the European Network Against Racism. She focuses on advocacy on the AI Act and related digital rights portfolios. She defends a transversal and sustainable relationship with EU institutions with a racial equality lens. Everyone, please give a hand to Oyidiya. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for being here today. I hope that everybody can hear me well. Today, I have a little bit of sore throat, but I'll do my best so that my message can come to you. So most probably you will be wondering why a European Network Against Racism is here speaking in front of all of you who might be most probably students or technologists or in between, right? So I would start my speech just by providing an example of how I perceive things in this way. So many years ago in my previous life, I was an athlete, and I used to do relays, long relays, 4x400 relays. And one day, the coach who was just managing everything, she told me, "Okay, I'm going to position you on the third lap, because I think that you would be really great on making sure that we don't lose any position that we are at the moment." And you can imagine that I was just like, my task is in the end just to make sure that the position is always the same, just to maintain it, or should I be the one who can try to make sure that the position is improved? In the end, I improved the position, so we finished first, but it made me think, what was the reason why this person told me that? And I thought, okay, yeah, it's true that the third position always, or most of the times, is the one who's always trying to maintain the status quo of a race. So then I was just thinking, well, maybe we should try to contest that, right? We should try to make sure that we could try to improve or try to prove that no matter in which position you are, you can still make a change, right? So just to give you as well a little bit of perspective of what ENAR is and why I'm here. So as Steph was saying, I work on policy and advocacy, and one of the things that I've been looking for the last year and a half has been the EU AI Act. Most probably you know that the result of EU AI Act has not been as successful as it has been, even though they say that it's the first in the world, it's super progressive, and many other good things. But yes, it's good for those who believe in innovation. But for those who think that fundamental rights should also be in hand with innovation, it's a failure. Why? Because we see that aspects like migration, like national security purposes, that we don't know what is national security in the end. For example, COVID was a national security issue not so long ago. And law enforcement are out of the EU AI Act, which for certain kind of populations, it's something that is really problematic. So for example, if a person of color goes to the street and then they face a surveillance camera, it still will be out of the EU AI Act. And this person, even though might have the opportunity to contest what has been, why this person has been stopped and questioned, there's still many things that could be improved in terms to make sure that that technology could be better, right? So ENAR was founded 26 years ago this year, and we have more than 160 members across Europe. We try to make sure that, it's a network of many organizations, think tanks, grassroots organizations, and we try to provide an EU understanding of how racism is, and how to make sure that in the end, we have a good relationship with the Commission, with the European Parliament, and we try to make sure that we can have progressive laws in terms of how to stop racism in Europe. And in the end, we try to make sure that in the end, one of our key values is to make EU more inclusive. We have different areas of work at the moment. These are just a few of them. And digital rights is something that is really new for us. we saw that there's this, we work in general for, to fight against discrimination, but we saw that AI was another way of just multiplying the harms that people of color have been suffering for a long time already. And at the same time, as just to make a reference to Adam Smith with the invisible hand, we see that there's a still invisible hand working on AI, right? And that makes sure that there's certain kind of people, people from underrepresented backgrounds in general, who are not being taken into account, or who are taken into account in very negative ways, or they are being surveilled, right? So we thought, why not working on digital rights? And today, I want to speak about something, about this, but in a different position in terms of narrative. Because we are working with narratives at the moment with AI that are very, depending on where you are, let's say, on the wheel of production, can be really positive or really negative for you. So today, I want to just make sure that there can be, or we could see narratives in another way in which we can shape them, in which we can be the people who are driving that narrative. So, for example, in our organization, we see that reacting to what many things are happening leads to exhaustion. It is really tiring to see every time seeing people suffering because of how they look or what they believe. And there's a point in which we cannot continue reacting to everything that is happening, because there are many things happening nowadays, and there have been, we have been suffering about it for a long time, and nobody has been listening to those narratives, or they have been just silent, or nobody has cared at any point. So it's time to build other narratives, other stories that in the end connect with what we want to say. Because technology can still help those people who have been underrepresented and who have been undermined by technology. And in this way, when we create new narratives, it is interesting to see how we can try to make sure that people can be part of it, how can be really active assets of the change that we want to see, and how we could try to make sure that these people are always there. Not just to make sure that in the end we are just like ticking the boxes, rather than being mindful about the value that these people with their own experiences can provide. So in the end, it is more about imagining new futures, how the people or how our futures could look like if we try to make sure that since the very beginning, there's people who have been suffering the consequences of AI or any other kind of systems or technologies can be part of it since the very beginning. How do we make sure that in the end they can provide a future that really takes them into account? In the end, it's also like a participatory process. We have to make sure that they are always there, and that there's also like a kind of combination of technologists, of people who have been working on social sciences, also activists, to see how everybody can, in the end, be part of it, be part of the change that we really want to think that might be possible. And also trying to understand the problem. And by understanding the problem, something that it might be helpful is that, I don't know, I'm a technologist and I want to help people, people who have been affected by AI systems or technologies in general. What about volunteering for these people? What about trying to make sure that we can connect really with their problems? Because sometimes the problems that we might think that they have are even more basic than what we think. So in the end, a narrative can also be positive. We are seeing in many cases that there are those 8 people who are billionaires who think, yes, I know how AI works, and if you want to regulate it, just let me know, and then I will help you do this. Just make sure that when you regulate it, you take into account my point of view because it's really valuable, right? And it's just like, but sorry, this is not how it works. I mean, you are not creating those laws for you, right? we have to make sure that in the end, there's other narratives in which is, yeah, I've been affected, or I can be affected, or my family, my friends, whoever can be affected by these systems. Because in the end, all of us, we can be really vulnerable to these technologies. And how it affects us depends on our backgrounds in many cases, or our experiences, right? So we should also try to think that maybe those laws can be really useful for all of us, independently of who you are in the end. So narratives or positive narratives can bring people together, can make sure that we can try to exchange information and to see how complicated and also how it remembers us like struggles from the past, because AI only brings the struggles that we have been suffering for a long time, but in another form, in a form that it says, oh, well, sorry, it's just like a lottery, it's you this time, it will be another person another day, but in the end, you are being affected. And as racism, for example, you think that it's something that it comes from you, it's just your fault. But when you start speaking with other people, you see that you are not the only one. And that is how, by speaking with people, with communities, you see how this can be like a common understanding of our harms, because the harms of many of these people have been there for a long time and has not been addressed. So why not addressing it by speaking with another kind of narratives, with another kind of stories? And also stories can travel farther than statistics. The use of AI in many cases, they ask us to say how efficient this AI system it is, right? And we need numbers to make sure that that efficiency is. But what if efficiency, we see it in how many people, how many lives can be saved if we are using AI? That can be completely different. We are just speaking about the same things, but we are making sure that people are in the center, right? And how we can connect and engage with projects at a very deeper level in a way that we can really see other ways of understanding behaviors, of understanding lived experiences. And also it's interesting to see who presents the narrative. Who's the person who's going to be at the forefront selling the narrative, selling this alternative narrative? And how do we position ourselves? Like, is it me, the person who should be there, or should it be another person? And if it's another person, why is this one and not me? What is my role inside of that narrative? Maybe it's just to support. Maybe it's to provide, I don't know, technical expertise. Maybe it's to provide, I don't know, another completely different way of seeing things and presenting things, because I mean, maybe it can be a speech, but maybe it's a song. And with a song, we can still provide lots of good lyrics, lots of good stories, right? So in the end, how we communicate, it's very important. It's super interesting to see how accessible language is something that is key in order to make sure that all the people can understand what we are thinking, what we are trying to achieve. Because without this, without making sure that our vocabulary is really the same, we cannot make sure that our understanding can move forward, right? And the environment in which we are trying to make the questions, in the environment in which we are trying to make sure that there are changes, it's really key. Something that is really important is to make sure that care is always there. Because in many cases, we will be working with people who have been harmed in many ways, sometimes in a conscious way. I mean, yeah, they are conscious of those harms, and sometimes they are not conscious about it. So when you try to speak to them, you have to make sure that you can care about them, that you show that their stories are going to be really listened, and that action is going to take afterwards, right? And trust, so to make sure that there's care, first you should try to make sure that there's trust. As I was saying before, one example could be just trying to make sure that you volunteer in their environment, or that you are taking part of their parties, or any kind of volunteering work that might be possible. Because sometimes, even if we try to reward these kind of communities with money, money is not enough. Sometimes what they would like to experience is that what they say, it's really important for them, or that they feel like they are listened, or that they are being taken care about their positions, right? So in the end, there are many ways in which we can build trust. And sometimes the needs of the community are even farther than just something that can be an exchange of money in the end. And I would try to make sure that in the end I could finish with this question on how do people want to really feel when they interact with technology. It is really important to see and to make sure that when we try to develop technologies, we try to think about this. Because most probably for us, as we understand technology, maybe we want to see, maybe we think that these people think about this question like, well, they want to feel safe, they don't want to be stopped in the streets, they just want to have like a normal life, whatever normal life is. But in many cases, it's something even more simple than that. In this case, sometimes it is just like examples like, when I'm in front of the social worker, I want this person to feel like I'm a human being. I want this person to treat me like a human being. This is even more simple than in many cases what we can think with our mindset, right? But for many people, this is just the very beginning, the first step that they can take in order to make sure that, that their life is in another way, like it works really how it's supposed to be, right? So in many cases, the changes that we can make towards the other people who have been affected by AI systems, or that we are trying to improve our products to make sure that it's safe, it's inclusive, it's trustworthy, and ethical, in many cases can make really big changes in those people's and those mindsets, right? Nowadays, we are using technology in a way that we normalize its use, and we never question what it comes after, right? But as the invisible hand that Adam Smith was always saying that, yeah, it's always like there, and everything goes like magic, right? We are seeing that in the end, when we are using technology, there's a lot of people behind who are making sure that our technology is also working well. So, and it's not something invisible. Yeah, it's invisible because we don't want to see it maybe, but it's still there. It's still lots of people, millions of people making sure that, that in the end, we have the product that we are looking for, or that we think that we are looking for. Because I think that's something that might be interesting and important when we try to build a new narrative, when we try to build a new, I don't know, way of selling our products, is that maybe technology is not the solution that we are looking for. Maybe we're looking for other kind of maybe technology should serve for certain kind of needs that we have, but there are certain others that maybe it's about the people who we are working with, or the people with whom we want to be connected with, because maybe we are looking for connection, right? But how technology is going to solve that connection? After that connection, in the end, you need to meet another person, right? So in the end, yeah, it's something that we really have to think about, and try to make sure that in the end, people affected are always there, and how racialized communities have a really good understanding of what is happening. Just in every part and in each section of the development of AI, for example, they are always being there. And yeah, and it's really interesting to see how this develops, and how narratives can really be powerful to make changes, really positive and really powerful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, thank you very much, Oyidiya. We have time for some questions before we bring Rachel back on. So if you have a question for Oyidiya, can you please put your hand up? Come on, we must have some in the room. Don't be shy. Oh, we have one right at the back. Whilst Malcolm gets that mic to you, I just want to say your presentation just now just chimes so much with an event last night that Rachel and I had the pleasure to be part of, hosted by the Center for Techno-Moral Futures, where we tried to say that, you know, we have to ensure that lived experience is on par with every other aspect of expertise. And that's really, really important in development of AI. Anyway, have we got the mic? Yes, please. Hi,
I'm Michael McTurnan. I'm the CEO and founder of Voxio. We work with...
Sorry, can you be a bit louder?
Oh, sorry. It's unlike me not to be loud. My name is Michael McTurnan. I'm the CEO and founder of Voxio. We work with NHS Grampian, amongst others, to help young people manage their mental and physical health. But I also work 1 day a week as a counsellor in an accessible, sorry, that's better, an accessible counselling service, right? So the issue, the question is that there's something called an inverse care law, which means the more likely you are to require medical services, the less likely you are to have access to them. And I think you could apply that to AI and development of AI. It's not aimed, I can't see, it's not aimed at people who are on the fringes, who are excluded. Those aren't the sorts of projects that are being funded. So how can we change that and make sure that the people on the edges who can't afford, who don't have access, can influence the types of services that are delivered and how they're delivered? And so we could imagine that we could change the world to be more inclusive and more equal. Easy.
Yeah, easy. I think if I had the answer, maybe I wouldn't be here. I would be a millionaire or something. But maybe we should try to make sure what is the power that we have, because all of us, we have certain kind of powers. How we can make sure that maybe these people can be in a meeting with the people who are developing these systems, or even in a meeting with the people who are making sure that everyone can have access to it, right? Because sometimes it is really, I mean, we have to see, for example, if the language that is being used in those systems, does everybody understand it? Because sometimes when we are trying to make sure that we get an appointment for our doctor, sometimes it's not even understandable for those who are natives, right? So sometimes there are even like closer steps or easier steps to make, like for example, to make sure that language can be understandable for everyone. And to make sure that this is something that can be feasible, why don't you invite those people to be part of it? Like, how do we make sure that you can understand, you can have really quick access to it? And also, like, even if accessibility in terms of language is there, it would be nice to see how many minutes each person, depending on their background, is spending on that AI system to get an appointment. Is it real? Is it equal that somebody takes to this person 10 minutes and the other person it takes it 2 minutes to solve the problem? I think there's even if language is there, we should try to make sure that people are spending the same time there. But of course, maybe having the systems in other languages might help as well. And try to map who are the communities who are struggling more with the access to healthcare and to access to those systems as well. And maybe go there, ask them, hey, what are the questions, or just sit next to them and see step by step where are their struggles that they are having when they are trying to navigate through that system. That might be also helpful. And at the same time, if you are part of the development of those systems, how you could try to make sure that those changes are actionable. And yeah, so in the end, it's more to see where are you standing, and from there, maybe you can try to pass the information from one side to the other. Maybe you are already the person who can change really, literally, the system. Or maybe you can be just like an advocate to make sure that healthcare is for everyone, and try to have those meetings with those people who are important that can make changes.
Thank you very much. Another question? Here we go. In the front, welcome. Front, welcome. Front. This front.
Thanks for your talk.
Could you stand up, and, if you don't mind, if possible? And,
thanks for your talk. My name is Shirley Calvin. You talk about creating new futures. I find that a very big statement. So to what extent? And I mean, if it doesn't exist, who decided and how? And if the data doesn't exist, are you talking about creating some synthetic reality or synthetic data in order to train our algorithms?
So when I speak about creating new futures, yeah, in this case, how can we create new futures about data that we don't have? But sometimes we should try to say, sometimes we should try to ask, maybe it's not data that we don't have, maybe it's data that it's not accessible for us. So in many cases, there's data that is out there, or maybe just by the data that it's accessible, we can still infer what information is missing, right? So about creating new features, I was not thinking about it in terms of data. I was thinking more about the narratives that we can use in order to make sure that we can have AI that it's for everyone. But of course, when you're thinking about the missing data that is there, it's really interesting to see that there are many other ways in which we can infer certain kind of information, and specifically about people who have not been kind of tracked in the correct way, right? Because there are many proxies that we can, in the end, use in order to develop certain kind of uncertainties or missing information that we never had. But I think that by creating new features, something that we could do is to how we can make sure that we can be creative with the data that we have. Also, because it's an exercise. Like, if we only analyze the data how it is, we will only get the information that we want through our lens, of course. But if we try to make sure that maybe we could work with the data that is there and say, what is missing here? And try to ask questions. Before I used to sometimes like gather data, and then from there, I remember, yeah, and then from there, I was asking questions even before analyzing or even before cleaning all the data. And I remember that I was having so many questions that in the end, most of them I could not answer because I was saying, no, the data is not there, but my curiosity is there as well, right? So how do I make sure that my curiosity is still like fed, but the data can serve to my purpose, right? So in many cases, we can still try to build with our imagination stories and try to imagine how do we want to see that data, right? Maybe our task is not to extract data to have those answers. Maybe our role would be to think, I would like to see this. And maybe somebody will tell you, yes, I know how to do it. But of course, the narratives that we try to build, it should be always shared. Because if you don't share them, it would be very difficult that in the end you could try to have like a common understanding or a way in which you can have an answer to your questions. But of course, in many cases, it's not in our hands all the information that we have. And nowadays we see that transparency is something that is lacking when we are speaking about AI, just because, there are many interests behind, and we don't want our system to be copied, whatever. But transparency should be something that in the end we should try to look for.
Thank you very much, everyone. Oyidiya.